Live from New Delhi, you're watching DT India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. For the news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Julia Chapman. Julia, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Shubhendu. Coming up, renewed efforts at diplomacy in the Middle East, a new dynamic in Ukraine, and Oscar Pistorius is a free man. But first, the headlines.
Liberian ship with 15 Indian crew hijacked in the Arabian Sea. Indian Navy deploys INS Chennai to tackle the situation. Israeli Defense Minister outlines post-war governance plan for Gaza. US Secretary of State on his fourth visit to West Asia amidst the Israel-Hamas conflict. And tensions escalate on the Korean Peninsula. South Korea conducts live firing drills after North fires over 200 artillery shells near a disputed maritime border. The Indian Navy has sprung into action as news of Liberian flag ship being hijacked in Arabian Sea near the coast of Somalia, with 15 Indian crew members on board. As a response, Navy deployed INS Chennai warship to monitor the maritime security operations and ensure the safety of the crew. The vessel had sent a message on a portal indicating boarding by approximately 5 to 6 unknown armed personnel in the evening on January 4th, that is Thursday. Naval aircraft continues to monitor movement and INS Chennai is closing the vessel to render assistance. The Indian Navy remains committed to ensuring safety of merchant shipping in the region, along with international partners and friendly foreign countries. DT India correspondent Akshay Dongare is joining us from New Delhi. Akshay, what is the latest on the hijack situation and the safety of the crew members?
Well, Shubhendu, as soon as the crew members of this ship in fact contacted the Indian Navy, the first action that was taken was to establish the safety of the crew, and that is why the Indian Navy had flown a reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft over the ship that was hijacked by these pirates. And the first thing that was done early morning today was to establish the safety of these crew, and now the INS Chennai that is closing in on this merchant vessel is reaching in the Arabian Sea to ensure the evacuation and the safety of the Indian crew. This is in fact a very shocking case that has come up, because it's not just an isolated incident. It has become the third incident that has directly impacted India as far as these hijacking incidents are concerned in the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Aden.
Right. On that, Akshay, what explains the spike of cases of vessel hijack in the Gulf of Aden near Somalia coast in particular?
Well, there are speculations, all sort of speculations going on as far as the routes are concerned. Initially, as soon as the Israel-Hamas conflict broke out, we saw that how the merchant vessels that used to take the Red Sea route and the Gulf of Aden route, they had apprehensions as far as the safety of the crews are concerned, the safety of their ships are concerned, and it became a reality as we saw that the Houthi militants had started targeting the ships that were connected or they had any links with Israel, and they had also issued a warning for the Israeli ships not to take the route via the Red Sea. And it seems that as the international attention has gone toward protection of the ships from the Houthi militants, it seems that the pirates are trying to take advantage of that situation, and they are trying to in fact exploit the opportunity to in fact target the ships, the merchant vessels, as the focus right now remains on the Houthi militants and the attacks that they are carrying on, instead of the piracy that has been quite a problem in that particular region. Shubhendu?
Akshay, thank you for those updates. Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthi rebels detonated an explosives-laden boat in the Red Sea, defying United States' final warning against any such attacks. The blast failed to cause any damage or casualties. US military says the boat came within a couple of miles of merchant vessels and US Navy ships operating in the area. The incident comes a day after 12 countries, including United States, the UK and Japan, issued a joint statement cautioning the Houthis of unspecified consequences unless they halt their attacks. UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron has warned Houthis of international action if the attacks continue.
Well, I'm not going to spell out here what action will be taken, but it's quite clear to me this is unacceptable, this is illegal, it's not to do with Gaza, it's not to do with Israel, this is about the freedom of navigation, this is about the ability of ships to carry their cargo. The world economy, every economy will suffer if ships keep coming under attack in this illegal and unacceptable way. And these attacks need to stop or actions will be taken.
And amidst the ongoing operation, Israel has outlined the post-war plan in Gaza. Julia Chapman is in London, gets us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Julia, over to you.
That's right, Shubhendu. Israel has outlined proposals for the future governance of Gaza once the conflict between Israel and Hamas is over. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said there would be limited Palestinian rule in the territory. Hamas would no longer control Gaza, and Israel would retain overall control for the security situation in the enclave. He also said that the army would adopt a more targeted approach in the north and continue to pursue Hamas leaders in the south while working to free the remaining hostages held by Hamas. It comes as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken returns to the Middle East on Friday. He's expected to hold talks with Israeli leaders and Palestinian officials in the West Bank in an effort to increase humanitarian access to Gaza. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller says Blinken will also visit a number of other countries in the region.
Over the course of the next week, the Secretary will visit Turkey, Greece, Jordan, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, the West Bank, and Egypt for meetings with foreign counterparts and others. The Secretary will focus on a number of critical issues on this trip. First, he will discuss immediate measures to increase substantially humanitarian assistance to Gaza. The United States has played a critical role in unlocking humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people, but conditions remain extremely difficult. The Secretary will stress the imperative of expanding and sustaining safe access for humanitarian organizations to deliver food, water, medicine, as well as for commercial goods to enter all areas of Gaza.
As fighting between the Israeli army and Hezbollah intensifies over Israel's northern border, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell is visiting Lebanon on Friday. Borrell will spend the weekend in Beirut to discuss the situation at the Israeli-Lebanese border and explore ways to avoid regional escalation. I'm joined now by DD India correspondent Trent Murray from Tel Aviv. Trent, starting with the future of Gaza, tell us what the Israeli Defense Minister has outlined in this plan.
Well, this is a much anticipated announcement from Yoav Gallant because certainly Israel has faced international pressure to outline how it views the governance of Gaza in what is being described here as the day after the war comes to an end. They've released this one-page document. I think the main takeaways are that Israel has accepted that Gaza remains part of Palestine and therefore Palestinian civil affairs need to be managed by the political architecture of the Palestinian groups. But they have said that the idea that Hamas will have any sort of leadership role in the future is simply a non-starter for them. Israel is also saying that it wants to keep boots on the ground effectively and maintain security within the Gaza Strip regardless moving forward. They say they also want to continue to inspect all of the goods that go in and out of Gaza. But they have named Egypt specifically. It's worth remembering, of course, Gaza does border both Israel and Egypt, and they have said that Cairo needs to play a bigger role in governing Gaza moving forward and ensuring its stability. On the key question of who will rebuild Gaza and work on the rehabilitation of people that have been displaced by this war, well, Israel says it would like to see the US, European countries and other key regional players lead a multinational task force in order to try and help the people of Gaza get back up on their feet. Look, there is a lot in this plan. I think the main thing we need to watch for now is how both the Palestinians, of course, respond to it, but how international partners do as well, because there are many questions lingering around how just people in that region will rebuild their lives. It's worth remembering 2.3 million people live within the Gaza Strip.
And meanwhile, Antony Blinken is in town once again. What is he trying to achieve this time?
Yeah, well, this will be the fourth visit for Secretary Blinken to the region in the wake of October 7th, the fifth if you include his visit to Israel with President Biden in the days after that attack by Hamas. We know that there is a very large number of issues that he wants to discuss, both here, but with some of those other countries we heard there before, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Egypt. First and foremost is the situation in Gaza. We know America has been pushing for answers from Israel on when it will move away from its heavy warfare based on airstrikes and artillery strikes to something more targeted in order to try and prevent that civilian death toll continuing to mount. We know the issue of hostages will also be released, 129 of them still being held by Hamas militants within Gaza, including American citizens, and then some of these regional issues like the Red Sea, which we just heard about there, and also that situation in Lebanon. Tensions there remain very, very high. The Israeli army says it remains at its highest state of readiness along the northern border of Israel, effectively waiting and watching to see whether the Lebanon-based Hezbollah group will respond to that airstrike in Beirut earlier this week.
Trent Murray in Tel Aviv, thank you. Elsewhere in the Middle East, the Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the twin blasts that killed 84 people in the Iranian city of Kerman at a memorial for Commander Qasem Soleimani. In a statement posted on social media, the terrorist Sunni Muslim group said 2 IS members detonated explosive belts in the crowd, which had gathered at the cemetery in the southeastern Iranian city on Wednesday. Tehran earlier blamed the explosions on terrorists and vowed to take revenge for the worst atrocity since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The UAE, Jordan, Russia and several other countries have strongly condemned the bomb attacks and expressed their opposition to all forms of terrorism. Meanwhile, White House security spokesperson John Kirby said the United States has no reason to doubt Islamic State's claim. He said the U.S. had not seen any indication of a direct link between the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza and the attack on Iran on the anniversary of Soleimani's death.
We have seen the public credit now that ISIS-K has taken for the attack in Iran. We're certainly in no position to doubt that claim by ISIS-K. I haven't seen anything that indicates there's a direct link to what's going on in Gaza and with the attack in Iran on the anniversary of Soleimani's death. I haven't seen anything tangible that would tell me that there's a link there.
The UK has condemned reports that Russia is using ballistic missiles sourced from North Korea to attack Ukraine. The White House said on Thursday that North Korea recently provided Russia with ballistic missiles and launchers, which it believes were used in a major attack on December 30th. A spokesperson for the UK Foreign Office said in a statement that North Korea is subject to a robust sanctions regime and that Britain is working to ensure that North Korea pays a high price for supporting what the UK calls Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukraine says its air force conducted strikes against the annexed peninsula of Crimea, hitting a Russian command post near the port city of Sevastopol, as well as a military unit. Russia said its forces shot down 10 incoming missiles and 36 Ukrainian drones over the peninsula that it controls. Ukraine has stepped up its attacks on Crimea, which was seized and annexed by Moscow nearly 10 years ago. Kyiv has vowed to retake the territory and says it is aiming to destroy Russian military capabilities and force its fleet to pull back from the Black Sea. Tensions are escalating on the Korean Peninsula. South Korea conducted live-fire drills after North Korea launched over 200 coastal artillery shells near a disputed maritime border. South Korean defense forces have been monitoring North Korea's activities along its shores in cooperation with the US military. Meanwhile, South Korea also ordered an evacuation on an island near its border with North Korea, citing an unspecified situation. A spokesperson for the South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff issued this warning.
We sternly warn North Korea that they are fully responsible for this escalation of the crisis, and we strongly urge them to stop it. Our military is tracking and monitoring related situation in close cooperation with the US and the South Korea, and will implement measures in response to the North Korea's provocations.
DD India correspondent Andrew Wood has more from Hong Kong.
The South Koreans have sent an angry message to North Korea. North Korean and South Korean relations have deteriorated over the past year, in particular after the latest missiles and rockets that North Korea fired. There's been a lot more of them, and they've been fired either into the Sea of Japan, which the Koreans call the East Sea, or over Japan and into the Pacific Ocean. And both sides have suspended an agreement that they'd made to try to, well, reduce tensions on the border by saying that they wouldn't carry out exercises near to the border.
South African running star Oscar Pistorius has been released on parole almost 11 years after murdering his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp. The former Olympic and Paralympic athlete shot the 29-year-old model dead through a locked bathroom door in 2013. The 37-year-old spent 7 months under house arrest, followed by 8.5 years in jail. Late last year, a South African parole board ruled that he could be freed after completing more than half his sentence. DD India correspondent Ollie Barrett has more from Pretoria.
South African officials confirming in a brief statement that Oscar Pistorius is now at home. What they're not telling us is exactly when that move from prison to home happened, or indeed how, as a result. The fact that he is at home, though, means that the parole has kicked in. He will face a series of strict conditions between now and the end of his sentence in 2029. He will not be able to consume alcohol. He will not be able to give media interviews. Any employment opportunities will have to be run past his parole officer, and he will have to remain in the house, the address that he's given to authorities, for a certain number of hours per day. We are also told that he will have to take part in ongoing rehabilitation programs related to gender-based violence and anger management issues. Now, Oscar Pistorius' release from prison is a huge focus of attention here in South Africa. It is deeply controversial. There are women's rights groups who say it gives exactly the wrong message to be allowing Oscar Pistorius free on parole in this way. South African authorities insist that normal procedures are being followed with regards to these parole conditions and the release from prison, and that Oscar Pistorius is receiving no special treatment at all. It was back in 2013 that he killed his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, shooting her through a bathroom door here in Pretoria. It came just off the back of the 2012 Games in London, in which he was a huge star at the Olympics and also the Paralympics. There is going to be a huge amount of attention on Oscar Pistorius in the days and weeks and months ahead in terms of how he lives his life here in Pretoria under these parole conditions. Ollie Barrett in Pretoria, reporting for DD India.
That's it from me here in London. Back to you in the studio.
Julia, thank you for joining us with those updates. And we're heading for a short break, but still to come on DD India Global. Bangladesh set to hold the national elections on January 7th, with the campaigning concluding on Friday. Tokyo's Haneda Airport runway expected to reopen on January 8th after the tragic plane collision earlier this week.
We bring to you the legendary city of Ayodhya and tell you what makes Ayodhya everything that has got to do with the land of Lord Ram.
यहाँ रग रग में हर जगह राम ही है। सनातन धर्म के लिए तो गौरव की बात है। कण कण में भी भगवान राम की सत्ता का एहसास हमें होता है यदि हम लोग ध्यान से उसका अवलोकन करें। आज भी होता है।
This is 10th century old Hanumangadi temple.
यहाँ हनुमान जी महाराज राजा के रूप में बैठे हैं। भारत की संस्कार संस्कृति मठ से, मंदिर से, साधु से, संत से, ऋषि से, मुनि से, महात्मा से जुड़ा हुआ है।
ये विष्णु का मस्तक है, तो यहाँ पे हर कण पावन है। यहाँ
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Quake hit Japan will tap around $33 million of budget reserves to cover damages. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said that his cabinet will approve the emergency funding next week. Japan will also work with the United States military to intensify the earthquake relief operations, which claimed more than 90 lives so far. Rescuers have pressed on in a search for survivors as a 3-day survival window ended on Thursday afternoon. According to sources, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has written to his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida following the earthquake in Japan on January 4th. He said, and I quote, "I'm deeply anguished and concerned to learn about the major earthquake that struck Japan on 1st January 2024. I express my deepest condolences to the bereaved families of those who lost their lives. We stand in solidarity with Japan and its people affected by the disaster. As a special strategic and global partner, India values its relationship with Japan and is ready to extend all possible assistance at this hour." Meanwhile, the runway at Tokyo's Haneda airport that had been closed since a collision between two aircraft would likely reopen on January 8th, Japanese Transport Minister said. Crew at the airport, one of the world's busiest, began clearing the charred wreckage from the runway on Friday. Meanwhile, Japan had sought assistance with the Honeywell-manufactured recorders, but it is unclear if the recorders will be brought to Washington for analysis or if NTSB personnel will travel to Japan to offer their support.
We are currently in the stage of removing the aircraft that was involved in the accident. After that, we will proceed with restoration work on the runway. If no major problems come up during this process, we expect to be able to resume operation on January 8. Starting from January 6th, we have decided to deploy personnel at Haneda Airport to constantly monitor the runway and cruise and radar. We hope to announce a series of emergency preventative measures, including this one by the end of the holiday weekend.
Let's now take a look at some election-related stories making news around the world. Bangladesh is set to hold the national elections on Sunday, January 7th, for which the campaigning concluded on Friday. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party is calling a nationwide strike from Saturday to Monday to boycott the elections. On the other hand, religious minority community leaders have urged for robust security measures for minorities during the pre- and post-polling periods of the election. Taiwan is all set for presidential and legislative elections that is scheduled for January 13th. Elections are taking place against a backdrop of increased pressure from China as Beijing seeks to bolster its sovereignty claims. Ahead of the elections, China has been increasing pressure on the island, reiterating that reunification with China is inevitable. And UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak suggests general elections in second half of the year. In a statement, he refused to rule out holding an election in May, coinciding with local elections. But he said that to get the economy back on track, Prime Minister's comments came amid pressure from the opposition parties to call an election in the spring. And the coming months, Americans will head to polls to choose their next president. 6 Republican candidates are jostling to be their party's presidential nominee for the 2024 general elections. While President Biden is the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee, several third-party hopefuls have also joined the fray. Ahead of the polls, former President Trump has appeared at Supreme Court to overturn Colorado ban that barred him from running for president in that state. India's Union Cabinet clears Indian Railways pact with United States for international development. The Cabinet has approved MOU between India and the US for supporting Indian Railways to achieve mission net zero carbon emission by the year 2030. The MOU provides a platform for Indian Railways to interact and share the latest developments and knowledge in the railway sector. Moreover, it facilitates utility modernization, advanced energy solutions and systems, regional energy and market integration, alongside private sector participation and engagement. India's electronic exports witnessed a surge in 2023 due to growing smartphone shipments, including an upswing in output from tech majors Apple and Samsung. Electronic exports from the country reached $15.5 billion in the April-October 2023 period, as compared to $23.6 billion for the entire financial year 2023. At $4.8 billion, southern Indian state Tamil Nadu accounted for the largest share of India's electronics exports during the 7-month period, followed by Uttar Pradesh, which stood at $2.5 billion, and Karnataka at $2.3 billion. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra is being undertaken across India with the aim to inform people about government welfare measures. The Yatra has reached India's Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. The IEC van arrived in the state's Poonch district, where the local communities welcomed it with enthusiasm. On this occasion, several beneficiaries shared their progressive stories under the segment Meri Kahani, Meri Zubani. And moving on, we also get you a special update on what is going on with Britain's Royal Mail that unveiled a commemorative stamp collection featuring photos of the 90s pop group The Spice Girls, marking a historic first ever issue of stamps about a female pop group. Calling it Girl Power, Spice Girls said they were very excited to be celebrated by the Royal Mail. And that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.